G'day guys, welcome back to my channel. As you can see, I've got the new mic. Hopefully this will improve things and make things a bit more audible and not as bad as my last live stream, which was a bit, the audio was a bit crappy. So this should improve things, and hopefully this Sunday things will be much better. But on to today's episode. What I'm going to look at today is just discuss in general about the dark side of fasting. Now, while fasting is, quite protective of the body, it has quite a few benefits in terms of autophagy that most people are aware of, and those benefits, affect both not only physically people but also mentally, improves mental clarity, and has been used since antiquity by Hippocrates and many other physicians of the ancient world as a means of improving people's mental clarity, mental health, and also focus, stuff like that. Many philosophers of antiquity used this method. They found it, freed them from those sort of glycemic shocks, which they weren't aware of, but we know today, and they were able to focus on their work and create magnificent works in philosophy, art, and many other fields. But there is a dark side to fasting, and it's not what many people think. It's not the sort of length of time. Well, that has its downsides. Being in a catabolic state for a prolonged period, especially if your level of fatness is quite low, so your body fat percentage is relatively low. Using fasting sparingly here and there can have benefits. Prolonged fast for people who are too skinny can be a problem. Can zap their energy, because they just don't have the level of adipose tissue to support energy production, let alone the body is actually fighting tooth and nail to try and preserve that energy, the very limited energy that's stored in your adipocytes. So, that's what most people are aware of, those sort of general things, and also that, could be effects on performance, like athletic performance and stuff like that. But there is another side that is, not so much discussed. And there are two elements. One element is that if somebody's actually had a diet which has been quite damaging to the body for a prolonged period of time, and has very high levels of senescent cells, there is always the risk that those senescent cells that may be quite damaged or even precancerous could potentially survive, due to fasting. Especially if they've already established themselves for some time and they haven't been cleared out by the immune system, there is that risk. It's usually the risk is much higher when somebody actually has cancer and it's metastasized, and in those sort of circumstances, it's probably not the smartest thing to do. It's far better to actually deuterium deplete, get your fat levels much higher, lower your protein levels, and try and basically, fight it that way by supporting oxidative phosphorylation and actually re-establishing and rebuilding. I'll discuss this in a future video on deuterium, but it's an area that early stages of cancer can be, fasting can be helpful. Later stages of cancer, it can actually work against you. It's a bit like antioxidants, early stages, or at a stage when you've got some early, the illness hasn't really established, so it hasn't metastasized, antioxidants may have a role to play. But, if you're basically doing chemo or have already metastasized, what you want to do is you don't want to basically be providing that sort of assistance to those cells. You want to really be putting them under pressure, so to force apoptosis and death. So that's one element which has been discussed by a number of people. But there's another element that what today's video is all about, and it has to do with basically when you have certain cells that are at a certain level of senescence, damaged, they're unrecoverable, and the normal process of autophagy is basically clearing out the junk out of cells and basically improving their structure, just improving their quality. There's a bit of mitophagy that happens as well, where the cell will basically clear out some problematic mitochondria. It's sort of the other part of the recycling process of autophagy. But if a cell gets beyond a certain if a cell basically has accumulated a lot of toxins, this is where people can suffer quite unusual symptoms. And it's really that if people have a lot of heavy metals, have been exposed to mold, and other sort of endocrine disruptors, plastics and all sorts of things in our toxic chemical world, then when you actually get this apoptosis happening, you're not only actually releasing a lot of material that can be recycled, but that you're also releasing a lot of toxins into the system. And that can actually cause all sorts of strange side effects. And I've heard people on the internet, and in social media, talk about, I've been doing fasting, and it's, I've been really feeling, nausea, really feeling weak, really feeling sick, having stomach problems, and headaches and all sorts of issues and all that. What is more likely that's happening is you're actually, especially if people have come from like the majority of people that eventually get to do keto or paleo or low carb or carnivore, whatever, they usually have come from, a situation where they've had a number of health issues. They've basically, their body's been, ravaged with toxins and all sorts of things. And that's when they have, like myself with my heart condition, that's when people have their epiphany and they go, oh shit, I need to make some changes to my life, and there's some lifestyle changes. And as a consequence of making those lifestyle changes, they end up basically, gravitating towards low carb type diets, which tends to make it also easier to do fasting. And there's a lot of people that do both, and a lot of the actual channels around promote both. And as a consequence, what happens is people basically jump on both bandwagons. Now, there's nothing wrong if people don't have a lot of toxicity in their system, but if they do have a lot of toxicity, and there are a number of people, that have got low detoxification capacity. I'm one of those lucky people that have a high detoxification capacity, genes that actually allow me to detox things quite well, including alcohol, which is one of my indiscretions now and then. But there's a small minority of people, and it varies between different population groups that don't have that, and so they are far more susceptible when they do fast is to really feel like absolute crap, and for their health to go in a hell in a handbasket, and to really, be scratching their heads and wondering, what's happening? Why isn't fasting working for me? Why isn't my diet working for me? What is going wrong? And it's, they're just unaware that, they've just released a whole lot of toxins into their bloodstream. And, you know, while the body may be able to recycle, our own biological material that, gets recycled through the regular fasting, the problem is that, when you're actually releasing a lot of this sort of stuff, it just doesn't have any place immediately to go, so it just gets released all over in your bloodstream and in different parts of the tissue, so it can cause all sorts of different symptoms. So people, as I said, can have headaches, they can have stomach issues, they can have all sorts of different pains around their body, and they just scratch their head and wonder, what's going on. So I've just wanted to do this video just to let people know that if they are having these symptoms, that there could be issues of heavy metals or other issues. One way of doing it is, getting their doctor to do some tests and see what's happening. And that could help them, try and, narrow down what it is. It could be other issues as well. Certain adaptations and stuff like that. And, just if you've recently come across from a different type of diet, it could be other issues as well. So it's not necessarily, just that. But if each time when you attempt a fast, you really get these strange sort of symptoms, nausea, headaches, lethargy, weakness, feeling like just absolute crap, when you should be releasing all that energy and from your adipocytes and literally just energizing yourself with ketones. And if that's not happening, then you need to investigate that and really look into it. This video isn't aimed at basically providing any medical advice or basically any something to do or how to do it and stuff like that. I would, if you are having symptoms like that, seek medical advice, get tests done, find out whether you've got some sort of heavy metal toxicity or some other thing in your bloodstream, and try to narrow it down. It just basically may mean that because you've done a fast, you've actually exposed an underlying issue of toxicity that you're unaware of. So that's pretty much what the video today is all about, is just sort of focusing on these unusual sort of symptoms that some people are reporting, and to sort of try and encourage people to seek medical advice and try and find out and sort of narrow down what it could be, what sort of issues they may be suffering from, either present or past exposure. So that's pretty much it. I will do a video down the track that will cover some of the approaches that I've used in the past, or that have to do with dealing with heavy metal toxicity, mold, and many other things. And I'm doing some research going back a bit, because there's a lot of current mixed literature, and there's a lot of other sort of sites that have got all sorts of contradictory information about how to best deal with these toxicities. Some of them are very similar. A lot of them are actually based on questionable studies or quality of studies. So at the moment I'm sort of investigating a whole lot of studies, both old and current, and looking at what really works and what doesn't. Try to narrow down what is useful and what isn't, and try to basically provide people with some sort of more rational type of approach and protocols that actually can help mitigate, or at least help in the transition as your body actually is on a more on a better diet, a cleaner diet, and that usually that's half the struggle, being on such a diet. And it may actually motivate you even more to keep your diet even cleaner, so you can help the body along with upregulating glutathione, yeah, superoxide dismutase, SOD as it's called, those sort of intracellular sort of antioxidants, our internal machinery of healing and clearing, and sort of sometimes there may be a requirement to get certain things in the diet that basically can help as chelators and other things. So we'll look at those in a future video and sort of cover that in a bit more detail. This was basically just to let people know that there is a dark side, and if you're suffering, it's possibly something that you should look into and try and investigate it and get to the to the bottom of it. It's a bit like Elliot that actually looked at oxalates, and he was on the chatting with Bart, and that's Elliot Overton, and he was looking at how when you go on, some people when they go on a carnivore diet, they end up on occasions having oxalate dumping, and I actually suffered that for a small period of time. That was quite severe, and I had quite a lot of sort of foamy sort of urine, and I had to get onto citric acid, and try to basically deal with that so I wouldn't end up with another kidney stone. So, I mean, I'm past that now, which is good, but it was a horrendous experience and a scary experience, and I would imagine that many other people that have experienced that would also have had similar feelings to me. Am I doing the right thing? What am I doing? So, but if you want to basically get more on that, Sarah and Elliot are probably the two best people to go to. They've got some really good videos on oxalates, and I would be checking those out. My focus is more on looking at the dark side of fasting in this video, and also focusing on in a future video on the sort of protocols it could use depending on what type of exposure you've had, both either in the past or present. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Thanks for listening, and please, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and if you like this video, please click a thumbs up. Anyway, see you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye, and have a good day.